Good afternoon. Okay, so I was thinking about making a video for an article that I've read recently, and I really didn't want to do an entire review on the article. Ooh, I'm bouncing. Ooh, earthquake. Um, sorry. But the article did inspire me to make a video about donors versus vampires in the vampire community, and the things that happen. And the reason that this article inspired me so much is that it goes over the aspects as an observer, and it's very condensed information about the facets of the community, and going through each little section of what this person felt that the OVC consisted of. There were many holes, and it was mostly abbreviated, these facets. You know, they had a small paragraph about what the facet consisted of. Um, and there were things about the article that, more shaking, keep my hands off the table. I felt like, you know, they had rogues as a subject of one of the facets, but not Ronin. And there is a difference. And if you want me to go over that difference, I'll make a different video about that. But donors in the community being a facet all their own and not being linked to any of their facets in this article. There were facets such as, let's see, entrepreneurs was a facet, pornographers was a facet, criminals was a facet, charities, donors, rogues, scholars, online ambassadors, role players, you get it. But also, as well as role players, lifestylers was also a facet that was missing. And it doesn't say under either role player or entrepreneur lifestyler. And I thought that was very strange. It's completely stricken from the entire article. And maybe it just didn't get thought of, but I thought that was very interesting. So this video is sort of inspired by this article that I read. And as for the writer, you know, I feel bad for them because clearly they haven't had a good time in the VC, and the VC can be a very difficult place. But when this person wrote this article, I kind of want to say, who peed in your cornflakes that morning? Jesus Christ. I felt really bad. But going on to donors in the community is what this video is about. Donors versus vampire relationship. Yeah, and this is sailing into the topic of the Donor Bill of Rights, the Black Veil. If these are things that are news to you, I'm going to link them in the comments below, as always, or in the description or something. If you are a donor and you are considering donating to someone and you don't know about these, you don't know about any kind of form of regulation, the Donor Bill of Rights or the Veil, well, here's your education. And if your vampire that you're thinking of donating to doesn't know about them either, shame on that vampire. And also that instantly tells you that you're in a pot of hot water. If you are considering donating to someone that doesn't know about these two articles, these two documents, you need to back up. You need to get away from that person. They are not going to do you any good. They are not aware of regulations. They are not aware of the consequences of hurting you. Which probably means that they're not caring about the legal ramifications of hurting you. That's where that leads to. I know some donors that, like, you know, after people get around in the community for a while, you start to realize that some people have an agenda. It's not that they're donating out of the goodness of their heart. You start to realize that there's almost a dominant submissive relationship going on their end, be it the vampire or the donor, or either or. I know vampires that have just gone through donors and they keep having problems after problems, and You know, people are crying and depressed and angry, and there are all these emotions flying around, and you know, they say, what am I doing wrong? And I'm like, well, you're a psycho. I mean, people just get taken back. They're just like, you know, you're trying to fulfill some sort of fantasy when really you should be having a platonic relationship with your donor. Platonic relationship first. If things are going to get more developed, then a contract needs to be altered. There should always be a baseline for that particular kind of relationship. Everybody should be all hands on deck and very clear about the foundation to start off with. If this is not how you're setting up your relationships, that could be your problem with your donor slash your vampire. There are a multitude of consequences to choosing to have this kind of relationship, from starting platonic and ending romantic. And I mean, nobody really wants to think about the end of a romantic situation because you never really know where that's going to be. Again, I said in another video, you know, the line from Volcano where the girl is talking about the lava bomb, the projection. People are not aware of their projection, of where the things that they put into motion are going to land. You know, people start to have a romantic relationship. They've got this girlfriend, this boyfriend that's also donating to them, and they feel so good. You know, depending on where the relationship ends. You know, if it's ending at boyfriend, girlfriend, there's less damage. If it's ending at boyfriend, girlfriend, living together, that's a little bit more damage because then there's monetary value involved. I know people, I've heard horror stories, you know, things like, I'm a vampire and my wife is divorcing me and she used to be my donor and now she's taking my kids. It gets bad, guys. It gets really, really bad. There are reasons why a donor-vampire relationship should remain platonic. And I'm no different. I've had this happen to me. I know people that it's happening to right now. And, you know, we can only be happy for these people when this happens, when donors turn romantic, and we can only be happy and just be like, oh, I'm so glad you guys are doing so well, and I hope things continue to do well, and hopefully this will not end in an explosive mess. I know people who have had explosive messes and yet keep doing this to themselves. True story. I know people that have gone, donors, that have gone from vampire to vampire. I mean, there are nasty words for these people. Puppies. Fangbangers. Courtesy of True Blood. That is a thing. And at that point, you really have to ask yourself, out of both archetypes, out of the vampire and the donor, methods to madness, and do they have ulterior motives? I mean, the vampire has the need. The donor is willing to give. That's as platonic as it gets. But then there are other reasons that people decide to communicate with each other and see each other, and it can get really ugly. I mean, nobody ever thinks about it really getting ugly. They think about the relationship and how positive it is. And I mean, I feel like I'm kind of like shitting all over this topic. I felt kind of bad about that. I don't want to be the naysayer. And personally, the easiest comeback somebody could give to me is, Michelle, you don't even have a donor. You're naysaying all over donors and you don't have one. How do you have room to talk? And it's like, well, I don't have a donor, so I don't have these problems. And they're like, yes, but you have other problems, like being sick at the drop of a hat because you don't have a donor. Which is entirely true. Many of my friends and my family in the VC, you know, they look at me and they say, we know how sick you are. We know that you are chronically ill. And guys, you know, I function just fine. I've been dealing with this my whole life, and I intend to keep dealing with it as long as fate wants me to be here. As long as my life extends. Um, it doesn't stop me. I'm chronically anemic. I have very severe insomnia. Um, People that are very close to me are very much aware of how much I work and that I work around the clock. In fact, that might be a video that we eventually get to about a day, like a 24-hour period of my life, um, which could be really psychoanalyzed if we think about it. That could be fun too. I'm always open for a good analyzing, especially of me. Um, um, and it's not that I'm against, a donor relationship. It's that I have trust issues. I have trust problems with inviting someone into my life, into knowing me intimately. Um, Even though I live an extremely quiet life, or what I would consider a quiet life, um, I'm still an extremely busy person. I know people that are running businesses that are in the community and they run like 5 businesses or 3 businesses, and they're kicking butt left and right, and they've got a wonderful support system. Um, People that are married that have kids and can't have donors. I've talked to some really grisly, unfortunate people that have said, I'm looking for someone to donate to, but I'm monogamous. And I'm like, what? And they've come back and said, I'm a monogamous donor. And well, okay, for one, the communication is terrible. That's terrible communication. That is implying that you can be the only donor. Let me explain this to some donors. How would you feel if someone handed you on the first date a plate of broccoli and said, "Here, honey, I cooked you some broccoli." And it looks delicious. And you're like, "Wow, thanks. This is so beautiful and it's really good." And then for the next date, they handed you broccoli. And you said, "Oh, we're having broccoli again." Yes, it's what I cook. It's what I make. And I make it only for you. On the 4th date and the 5th date, broccoli. And you're like, do I really want to see broccoli again? But like, he's so sweet. And it's like, yeah, but he serves me broccoli all the time. He like can't serve me anything else. This is what you were doing. Not only are you insisting that this is a romantic relationship, but you were demanding to only serve them broccoli and that they can have nothing else but broccoli. Do you do that to your pets at home? Your cat and your dog? No, you don't. I mean, especially a cat. I mean, a cat would flip and starve and run away if you gave it the same food that it didn't like. This is really sick. Believe it or not, this is a situation that actually happened. Are you believing this right now? This person actually did this. I'm just like, one, they're demanding a sexual relationship, a romantic relationship, and then that they're the only donor. This is lover, provider, all in one. You can't see other people. I mean, this is serious. This kind of stuff really does happen. I mean, this is twisted. And I tried to use the broccoli analogy with them, and they, of course, were offended. And I'm like, but you do realize that you are looking for, like, the unicorn of vampires. That there's only a certain kind of vampire that is going to allow this. And do you know that this type of person is probably very insecure, does not have a good communication with anyone, and that the fact that they are relying on you for everything is going to eventually get tiring for you. You want to be someone's everything. You want to be in control. Now, I mean, this is just a good situation. We can flip-flop the roles here. You know, this could be the vampire that wants to be monogamous only with one donor. There are so many aspects here that could be interchangeable. You see the problem this could make. This is not a healthy platform. And that's really what I'm trying to get across, is that there are healthy platforms in a donor-vampire relationship, and then there are not healthy platforms. And even if you have the best of intentions, as I usually do, you're going to find people that have nefarious intentions, that have devious intentions, that like the shock value, that like the surprise, that fly by the seat of their pants because they like the rush. Unfortunately, that means that the rush has nothing to do with you and everything to do with them. Please keep that in mind. Is that, and even and this goes for even in like the bondage submissive community. You can easily look at relationship dynamics and see the A, B, C, D, E, F, all the way down to Z on how this is going to end. What places they're going to hit milestone-wise, and which milestone is it that's going to end their relationship. I mean, there are several networks of pathways, but if the foundation doesn't start right, the ending is going to be closer than expected. And that's really just relationship science in general. You know, you can theorize as much as you want, but it's nearly a mathematical equation. Gosh, so much moving. And again, people come back and they're just like, but you don't have a donor. How is it you're talking about this? I have had experience with donors. And let me tell you, age, their preference, who they are, their agenda, all matters. There are times where I've had donors surprise me and invite other people over, and I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You invited me over, we're chilling out, I sit down on the couch, and there's somebody else here. And they're just like, oh, it's, you know, this is my friend from the VC, you know, from like 3 cities over. He's coming to spend the night. I was hoping that you two could meet. I'm like, well, you know, you could have told me about that before I came over. Obviously, I'm trying to explain to you that I don't like surprises, but you should not be surprising anyone, especially a vampire. Don't surprise vampires. We do not like it. Vampire to vampire exchange of data is instantaneous, and we learn very quickly, we analyze very quickly, and we pick. It's pretty much like if you've ever seen 2 dogs that have met for the first time and all they do is stare at each other, and you're like, are they going to be happy with each other, or are we going to have a fight any minute? Same problem. We are talking to each other even though we don't even say anything. And it's a lot like sniffing each other out. We just look at each other and we're like, how many times have I seen you? How many times have I heard about you? What do you post about? Is your vibration someone I'm going to get along with? What is your intention about my donor? These are the things that would fly past my head just instantaneously, within 2 seconds, just boom, all that would go off. And instantly I'm angry at my donor, I'm angry at the person I'm meeting. There's embarrassment because you were clearly not prepared. You're standing there and you're just like, I mean, and you can only imagine what the receiving end of this is. You know, they're just like, yeah, hi, what's up? And, you know, they can feel any way that they want to at that point. You know, there's so many emotions that can happen. Everybody's an individual. And donors don't always realize, you know, the fan club does not always know each other as much as we wish we did. Everybody in the Mickey Mouse Club is so diverse and over widespread that not all of us know each other that intimately. Um, And there are donors that will be donors to multiple people and not tell other people, and all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, I can't tell you how many problems go on here. um, I mean, and of course, and then there's the whole side of the community that, I mean, this is all well and dandy if you're talking about donating energy, but then there's all the rules, regulations, and protocol that goes in if you're donating blood. Your sexual partners, how many times you donate to plasma facility, how many times you go to the doctor, how many times you are donating. Like, all this really does need to be documented, and possibly in writing, that you agree to only have specific sexual partners, and never, of course, without some kind of protection, because there are blood-borne pathogens. There are sexually transmitted diseases that eventually get to blood. There are so many aspects of this relationship. You could write a book and have like a 3-inch thick book with every aspect in every chapter. And again, people come up to me and they're just like, you should really have a donor. Why don't you have a donor? And I've done that before, and I almost would rather be bedridden. And many people are like, well, that's what's going to happen. I'm like, yeah, and I prefer it. I prefer my senses sharp, overly sharp. I mean, yeah, okay. I mean, I'm probably a little frayed, frayed at my ends. Um, and you could definitely say that I am paranoid about people. God, what is with the shaking? Stop shaking. Okay. But I like my space, and I prefer if people respect my space. There are people who have come to me and said, I really want to donate to you. And I'm like, oh, that's so sweet. And that is, it's really an honor when people come up to you and they say that they want to donate to you, especially when you don't know them from Adam. It gets a little suspicious. And it's like, well, what are you looking to donate? I mean, they instantly already have their own agenda, and it's entirely fine at that point. But when you see them, when you're talking to them for about 4 months, and then you eventually meet for just talking, drinks, and you finally get down to that time where you're going to have like your first donation. And if it is blood, I mean, this is like strictly a hypothetical scenario. Like, I would never do this, but at least not this particular scenario. um, when you're sitting on someone's couch or on a counter, and you've made an X, and you've got the alcohol bottles and your sharps container and your Band-Aids and everything, and your mouth is up against someone's arm, and the donor decides to open their mouth and say, harder. And you're just like, oh my God, did you really just, and they're saying all kinds of things, and I'm just like, if that doesn't ruin the situation for you, anything that they decide to say at that point, I'll tell people, like, do me a favor and please just like remain in your meditative space. Like, please don't say anything unless you feel like you're going to have an emotional release. Then warn me beforehand, but don't say anything, and please don't move around, especially after, because my body is recalibrating. The last thing I want to do is be able to, be stuck in this situation and not really being able to move, and just really like enjoying the high, and have to watch you move around. I don't know what you're doing. I'm already suspicious of that at that point, because I'm not functioning great at time. Things for me get really slow motion. Um, in any kind of feeding situation, I become very almost like kind of gently catatonic afterwards while my body is like trying to recalibrate and fix and balance out. I've seen this happen to other people where um whether it's donor or vampire, it doesn't matter, but things happen in this scenario where people are just like shock happens. And I had a friend that this happened with where it was just overly dramatic, and I'm just sitting there like I'm watching all this happen. I'm like, maybe I should give them some privacy. Maybe I shouldn't be here. Really? So I guess I don't want to come from like a prudish place, but I guess I'm kind of stuck there at this moment, aren't I? Just still like, oh my gosh, the memories, just the flashbacks I'm having right now of things that have happened that I've seen and witnessed, and oh, poor Dave. Um, anyway, I think this concludes the end of this video. Um, if you have any situations that have ever happened to you that were embarrassing or surprising, shocking, um, things that made people laugh, things that made people get up and walk away, if you have any horror stories, please put them in the comments below. I'm always looking for more opinions than my own when it comes to any of the topics that I talk about. And we'll try to keep my camera from doing that in the future. Have a good day. Have a good night. Take care.